What is that loudness unit and how does it work? This is what you're going to learn in this video. My name is Pierre-Yves Mutreux with TWR Europe and the Global Audio and Acoustics team. If you want to measure the weight of someone, you cannot just look at the height. It's not going to tell you the weight. You need a scale, right? These two persons here measure the same, but one is obviously heavier than the other one. Well, with audio, it's the same thing. You see these two examples? You can listen to them in the first video, by the way. One is obviously heavier, louder than the next one. And if you only measure the peaks, you're not going to be able to tell which one is louder. Maybe you can tell one is a bit louder than the other. You can't give a value. What is the weight of audio? How do we define the loudness? A hint, not the peaks. To measure loudness, or to measure how loud audio is, we need to measure the RMS value, the root mean square, the energy. If you add to that a specific filter that is called the K filter, defined in the standard, you get the loudness, or the loudness unit. We'll come back to that. If you want a little bit more technical inputs, this is the way it's defined. Every channel is applied the same filter, applied the root mean square, and added together, made into decibel, and then gated to avoid that when the signal is 0 or below a certain threshold, it is counted. You can read more about this in the standard itself. The units. Loudness is a decibel. But so we recognize it is defining the loudness and not just the level. We call it loudness unit, LU, but 1 LU is equal 1 decibel. LU can be measured as a difference between two audio signals or as an absolute value, for example, from full scale, LUFS. Or we can say the loudness from a certain reference. For instance, TV stations use -23 or -24 as a reference, and then we qualify a certain LU, loudness unit, away from that reference. In our case, we're going to use LUFS because our reference will not be 23 or 24. Now, to measure an RMS value, root mean square, we need a finite quantity of data. And the obvious one is the total file. If we have the total file, we can calculate the average. That is what we call the integrated loudness. But maybe we want something that is more like a live measurement when we play a file. For that, we have the short-term loudness, which is measured over a 3-second window. And there is the momentary loudness, which is measured over a smaller window of 400 milliseconds, and that behaves a little bit like the VU meter you are used to. There's one more unit, and it has to do with how the loudness changes with time. Loudness is never the same across the whole file. It goes up and down, and this is what we call the loudness range. This graph represents the evolution of the loudness across the whole file, or it's the distribution of loudness, or the frequency of occurrence of loudness. And the standard defines the way how to calculate the loudness range. I'm not going to go into details about how to calculate. You can read that in the standard. Just remember loudness range, and it's abbreviated LRA. You're going to see that often. There's a third thing that is very important and which is defined by the new loudness standard, and it's called the intersample peaks. If you take this example here on the left, you have a sample right at the peak of the audio wave. In that other example, you have a peak between two samples. That means the peak is higher than the samples. And this is what we call the true peak. And the way this is measured is also defined in a new standard. So we have 3 new units that you need to remember. We have the loudness unit, or the loudness unit full scale, to define the loudness or the integrated loudness. Then we have the true peak, measured in dBTP. It's just a way of defining this decibel value expressed as a true peak value. And we have the excursion of the loudness range, LRA, in loudness unit. That's about it. You can read more online. Here are a few resources, and hope you're gonna get acquainted with loudness very soon, because it will make sense to you and will help you in your production. I'm Pierre-Yves Mitreux with TWR Europe and the Global Audio and Acoustics team. Thank you for watching.